Welcome back to Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today's interview is one of the most requested I've had in quite some time. So by popular demand, we got him here today, all the way from the UK, Jordan Peters.
Hi Dave, thanks for having me.
All right, Jordan, in 2 sentences or less, tell everyone, no, just kidding. Tell everyone exactly, who you are, what you kind of do in the UK, because I know a lot of our viewers will know who you are, and maybe 50% of them might not. So give us a little background on how you got into bodybuilding and what you're doing right now.
Sure. So, like my initial introduction to bodybuilding was through lifting weights whilst playing rugby. I was pretty good at what I was doing then, but it didn't pan out into the career that I thought it would. So I went on to university. My undergrad was sports science at the best university in the UK for sports science.
What's that?
And
which university is that?
Loughborough University.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the hardest to get into in terms of grades, and like the amount of applicants they get is pretty crazy. So I was lucky to get into there for my undergrad, which was pretty cool. And then I did my first show whilst I was 19, whilst I was still studying, and just immediately fell in love with bodybuilding. And then as a result, started to get pretty addicted to gathering knowledge. Once I finished my undergrad, I did a postgrad in nutrition whilst still competing. And then I've recently just done a master's in physiology.
Let me ask you a question. When you do get a degree in nutrition from college, and I know the answer to this, I want to hear it from you. How much relevant information do you really learn that you actually now apply to your clients from that degree?
Very little.
Isn't that crazy? Sure. You probably spent a fortune on that degree too.
Sure. And even when it comes to my master's in physiology, I would say that even less again applies to being a bodybuilding coach. But I think just having a greater perspective in terms of what's going on is useful. And then studying as well teaches you how to self-teach, which is important, as you know, because without being able to gather that knowledge that is applicable, then we can't develop as coaches. So studying certainly has its advantages to becoming just more resourceful in general.
Now, I know you're a high intensity training type guy like I am. Were you influenced greatly by Dorian Yates back in the 90s? Hugely.
In terms of his mental and his physical approach to training. He was a huge factor in what I do. He wasn't the first factor though. Dante Trudel and dog crap training was the first influence.
Right.
So that lower volume, slightly higher frequency than Dorian used to do was certainly something that agreed with me initially, and I was able to get very, very strong, and I developed a lot of muscle mass quickly. Like you, since I first started, I've gained over 100 pounds of stage weight.
That's crazy.
And there aren't very many of us that can make claim to that.
No, there isn't.
So it takes getting incredibly strong, in sync with obviously being able to eat. You need both of those skills. And I think the high intensity training definitely lends towards that.
Jordan, when you see guys like doing these angle movements with these lighter weights with weird, like they're on the hack squat sideways and they're doing all kinds of unusual things, do you cringe when you see that? Because when I see that, I see it obviously works for some of the guys that are doing it because they're genetic freaks. But I know that the majority of the world out there is watching this and thinking that, hey, I could do that too and grow. And that's just not the case,
Like, as well, I think that those exercises are just a cop-out. I think mentally they're a cop-out. They're easy to do. Like, those movements, they don't tax you in any way, really. Like, compared to like an 8 and 9 plate hack squat, where mentally before you get into it, you're like, holy fuck, it's just some scary shit that's about to go down. And then the adaptations that forces, it's just not comparable in any way. But people will always try to cop out and do the easier things. Like when it comes to exercise selection, like you don't see people doing the hard stuff and getting really, really good at it. And then the guys that do, it shows in their physique straight away.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've trained guys that have made tremendous amounts of improvements over the years, and then I've trained guys that have made very little in the way of, because I do most people's diets. I'm not in the gym with them every day. So it really has a lot to do with what you're doing in the gym. What do you think, in your opinion, and from your experience now, that what is the ideal split? In other words, how to break your body up and how many times a week to train it, and how much rest you should be getting?
Like, I think that my views go against most like mainstream bodybuilding views when it comes to split selection.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that as a beginner, I think full body work is just an absolute must. And that's something that you just rarely see beginners do now, because they'll be replicating arm days that their favorite pro is doing. Right. And in that situation, like, an arm day is just a total waste of time for a beginner. Whereas they could literally just pick maybe 4 or 5 exercises: squat, deadlift, a squat variation, a deadlift variation, a row variation, a press variation, a dip variation, and then perform different variations of those movements 3 to 4 times a week. Right. And their bodies will adapt so fast. And for me, as you start to develop more and you start to build more muscle, you then need to start focusing a little bit more. So then I think a full body split then should break down to an upper lower split, as you need then to focus just one session on maybe your upper body. And then as you progress again, you can maybe push to like a push-pull leg split, where you need to break down again. I only really feel like the top end of guys need to be breaking down their body parts to like a split routine. Because I just think that time could be much better served doing exercises that challenge them in much harder ways.
Well, I always said to guys, if you want big legs, go into the gym and do 10 sets of squats and go home. That probably is all you really need. But that's not sexy. That's not cool.
No, it's not sexy and it's not cool, but it's fucking hard, and it works. But people try to reinvent the wheel in that aspect. Yeah.
So what do you let's say you get a guy who's been training a number of years and he comes to you and says, "Look, I need to make some better gains." What do you do with that person? How do you set up a workout for them? And what do you feel is the ideal amount of rest to be getting, in terms of off days and stuff like that?
Sure. Obviously, it depends on the individual's weaknesses. We're all going to have different weaknesses based on how we were introduced to training. And then it's just prioritizing those areas. I think when really trying to grow, I favor 4 days a week in the gym. That's always my preference. I find that when I train 5 or 6, or I sometimes hear guys training 7 days a week, I think to myself, how can you be going in there and training really, really hard? Like, I know that if I have a really, really hard session, I can only do that 4 days a week personally.
Right.
Obviously, I love to train, but when I do that 5th day, I can feel immediately that it's just not as productive as compared to rest.
Do you think that that different guys can handle different amounts of volume versus, or I should say, not really volume, different amounts of days they can train per week? Because I used to see Ronnie Coleman, and Ronnie Coleman would do high volume, heavy weight, and he would train 6 days a week, doing each body part twice a week. If I ever did that, I would never make any gains. But he seemed to respond very well to that.
I would be exactly the same as you. I wouldn't be able to progress on Ronnie's split. Like, the volume and the intensity and the frequency and the amount of rest that he had. But Ronnie is such an anomaly. We've never seen anything like him since, and we probably won't ever see anything like him again. No. So his recovery capabilities and his ability to build muscle mass, like even down to his exercise execution, he didn't train in a tidy way. You wouldn't think that his barbell rows would be able to build the muscle it did. Like, to me, that's not connecting with a muscle. Right. But he was just able to respond in such a fantastic way. So copying Ronnie's split, I would just say, is dumb, straight up. Like, I don't advise anyone do that.
I always say to people, I say, look, if you want to learn how to put size on, don't talk to the guy like Paul Dillette, who does 20-pound dumbbell curls and grows big, 24-inch arms, because obviously he doesn't know what the hell is causing his arms to grow, because it's certainly not the 20-pound dumbbells he's curling. Go to the guy who's the hard gainer who put on muscle, because that guy went into the trenches and experienced what it was to feel pain and suffering, and he knows how to do it. And that seems to be the mentality you take. When you assess a client, when they come to you and say, "Hey, Jordan, I want to train with you," what's the first thing that you try to figure out or work out with them in the gym from that perspective? Do you put them through a workout, or do you ask them questions?
Usually when I see someone's split written down, I can I can pick out some what I see as flaws, and then I'm just looking at execution of their exercises. I think the way that people execute and then the intensity on top of it. So basically, the effort that they put in and the level of accuracy that they're able to produce is what's going to result in the outcome we need. Some people just connect brilliantly to exercises. Like when I train with Sass, he's an example where everything he does, he connects perfectly with his muscle. Like he doesn't have to overly think to be able to do that.
Right.
Like he moves and his muscles contract, which is why he is able to grow the way he does. Yeah. So then simply just getting Sass stronger and maintaining that form resulted in a big step forward in muscle mass, because his ability to contract was already perfect. But then if you're not able to recruit muscles in that manner, that's something that someone has to learn. Right. And then that becomes a little bit tricky, because mostly stubborn body parts is just because other body parts are overpowering it, and then they're just stopping you from being able to put the tension where you want to put it.
Right. Would you say that's the biggest mistake people make?
I believe so, yes. I think that they rush getting strong and they don't prioritize what is moving the weight. Because obviously we need to get really, really crazy strong. Like weight is the biggest factor in gaining muscle. But
I agree.
Moving a weight from A to B and a muscle contracting, which forces the weight to move, are two totally different things. And as you know, like if you're able to place that tension where you want it and get crazy strong, that's where you make tons of progress.
Yeah, I tell this story a lot, but when I would go on a bench press, back in the day when I was at my biggest, and I'd have 405 on the bar, I'd bring the weight down so slow and deliberate, and I'd pause and I'd squeeze it up so deliberately. People thought I was stuck. They would come over and they would try to grab the weight, and I'd be screaming for them to get away from me. Sure. But I controlled the weight that much. It was that I would never increase the weight if I couldn't have that kind of control, because I knew that the muscle wasn't working if I was just kind of bouncing it off my chest or using momentum or something like that. And that's a hard thing mentally for guys to get past, because they want to train with someone else who's maybe bigger or stronger than them, and they want to keep up. But sometimes keeping up is not the right thing to do.
It's the worst thing in that scenario. You're right. Like as soon as you drop tension off the muscle that you want, you're hindering your progress. Right. Like when we think about those last few reps of a set, where we're getting closer and closer to failure, that's the point where our bodies start to grab onto every single muscle fiber we have. If in that moment our form goes to shit, why would our body grab those fibers to do the work? Sure. If we can recruit everything we can to cause hypertrophy, then we're going to grow a bigger muscle. But as soon as we put inertia into that like equation, all of a sudden we've made that movement more efficient for our body. And that's the exact opposite that we want to do. So in those last few moments, those last few reps, that's where in my head I'm thinking, don't fuck this set, stay on the muscle. Don't fuck the set, stay on the muscle. Right. And if you can mentally stay on the muscle and you bring it to a proper state of mechanical failure, you know for sure that you've stimulated hypertrophy, without a doubt.
What do you do with a guy, Jordan, who comes to you and he's squatting 500 pounds, his legs are not big, obviously he's doing something wrong, and you have to say, well, you know what, you're going to have to start lifting 135 now on the squat and get that down. How do you get these guys past that mentally, that they're going to have to lower the weights that they're lifting to relearn how to do the exercise properly?
The squat's an interesting example, because I actually don't use that movement very much now with very many clients, unless I'm able to be there in person to ensure that they're squatting in a way that encourages leg growth. Like I would prefer to put a client on a hack squat, because it's a pretty foolproof way to ensure you're going to get leg stimulus. Like for me, I stopped barbell squatting a long time ago. Like I love to barbell squat because it's a fun movement and it's challenging, but I wasn't getting the leg growth that I wanted from it, because just mechanically, I'm not suited to squat in a way that allows me to overload my legs. I just get glute growth and lower back growth. So you're going to go one way or the other when it comes to mechanics of a squat. Like you can see it's one of those rare exercises where you could have someone that's incredibly strong but still have rather underdeveloped legs, just because they're able to mechanically lift the weight in an efficient manner. You put someone on a hack squat, you bring their legs in tighter together, you put their legs lower on the platform, you ensure that they're driving their knees forward. It's impossible not to load the quad.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, you got to fit and that's what I always tell people too. Everyone has different biomechanical advantages and disadvantages. I never felt barbell curls because I have a very long arm. Dumbbells, cable curls, anything that was unilateral and really focused the attention on the muscle, I responded to better. And I had to just accept the fact that barbell curls didn't serve me. They just injured me, and
again, I'm the same as you. I don't barbell curl at all anymore. All of my curls are unilateral and just focusing on contracting my bicep as hard as I can and then just getting more efficient at that movement. And again, much better bicep stimulus from that.
Yeah, and people think that you have to barbell curl if you want big arms, and that's just not the case. Some people just can't do it. And so you really have to assess your own body in the gym. And now, if someone doesn't have someone like you or me or someone in the gym with them, are they actually missing a huge part of bodybuilding? I mean, because everyone thinks it's about food and drugs, and really, it seems like in today's day and age, the lifting part has just lost its luster, so to speak. It seems like the gym is more for people taking selfies of themselves and posting them online, posing in the mirror there. Do you think that's why maybe some of and I'm not saying all, because there are a lot of great bodybuilders, why a lot of the bodybuilders are not making the progress that they made and not having that look that we saw maybe in the early to late 90s?
I think so, yes. I think one of the things that I remind my clients often is to take pride in everything that they do whilst they're in the gym. Like, I tell them to take pride in their execution and take pride in their intensity. And if you can remember those things, then you're going to do well in the gym. Because to me, when I train, like, I take the utmost pride in ensuring that if anyone was watching me right now, that the way that I'm performing something is immaculate. The intensity that I'm performing at makes them go, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then if you can approach every session like that, then you're going to make tons of progress. But you're totally right. People don't take as much pride now in their training. Like, training is something that I obsess over, because in that moment, the challenge, I absolutely adore that aspect of it. But it's becoming, again, just less sexy.
Yeah. But you know what? I will say one thing. I'll give the UK bodybuilders their props. You guys definitely train. There's more hardcore training I see there than in the US. Maybe because of the weather.
I think as well, because we're all pretty good friends and we spur each other on a lot. So we'll all be pushing each other to see what we can do. Mm-hmm. So like James will put up a deadlift video, and then a few days later Luke will put one up, and then a few days later I will put one up. Right. And then that's just how we go over here. And we're just pushing each other in those terms, because those guys are really, really strong. And yeah, they train damn hard.
Now let's talk about Luke Sandow, because I think he made some tremendous improvements from last year to this year. You do his training. I know Chris Aceto's been doing his diet. Talk to me a little bit about what are his gifts in the gym and what you've corrected maybe and made better over this past year.
In honesty, Dave, I can't take masses of credit for Luke's progress at all. He's been one of my best friends for a long time, right. And we've bounced off each other for years. Like, we go back, like, sharing training with each other for like the last, no joke, 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. And we've always trained in the same style, always. So I cannot take credit for Luke's progress in that sense.
Okay.
Luke is just such a hard-working guy in the gym. Like, he's fearless. He'll step in there, and he's of that same mindset where he'll take pride in his execution. He'll take pride in his intensity. Right. And then it shows in his physique. His density is just crazy. One of the strongest aspects to Luke's physique is his density from behind. His back thickness is absurd. And he's a strong deadlifter. He's a strong barbell rower. And he's always prioritized those movements that are just really hard to do. And he's just got incredibly strong at them. Right.
Yeah, he's got a lot of thickness and density in him, and he's still a young guy too. When you train with these guys, and obviously some of the guys are stronger than you, does that drive you nuts, or does it help inspire you?
It depends on the exercises. I'm the strongest deadlifter. Uh-huh. They don't. So when it comes to deadlifting, then I will rule that section. When When it comes to squatting, James is in the league of his own. He's on a whole new level.
What are you guys deadlifting and squatting? Give me weights.
I'll pull 8 plates for 4 reps.
Impressive.
So that's I should be able to pull an 800-pound double fairly soon.
Oof.
So that's I should get that within the next couple months.
Crazy. What is James squatting? James Hollingshead.
James squatted 8 plates for 3 reps.
Wow.
Yeah.
The sheer weight of that on your back has got to be brutal.
That was the interesting thing. When you watch James walk it out, it doesn't even look like a weight.
It's like Akeem Williams is like that too.
But James, again, mentally, I've never met anyone like him. Like James is a very deep thinker, and he's able to call on some real nastiness when he needs it, which again is important in the gym for those kind of sets.
And he holds his hands all the way out again over the bar like that. That's like a very nerve-wracking position because you really have no push from your hands if you needed it.
But James is just a fucking beast, to be honest. That's the only way to describe it.
What gym do you guys train at?
We actually train at all different gyms. So Luke's over in Basildon, which is in Essex, just outside of London. Right. I used to live pretty close to him. Mm-hmm. And then James is in South London at King's Gym. And then I move around a lot because of my studying. So for the last 3 to 4 years, I've lived in a different place every year.
Gotcha.
Just because I've been studying. So I've been hopping around gyms. So
have you guys ever gone down to Temple Gym and trained there at all?
So I studied in Birmingham for a year.
Oh,
and,
really?
We did 6 months of our training in Temple. And I loved it in there. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Right.
It was pretty run down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the most clean of places, but it didn't bother me in the slightest.
Right. Dorian, I had Dorian on the show. Dorian told me that, well, at least when he was there, he said it was pretty, it looked pretty crummy, but it was always very clean. Now, I don't know if that's still the same nowadays, but. It was okay.
One of the things that after a high rep set of stiff leg deadlifts where you'd struggle to breathe, I would have to go halfway up the stairs to get some oxygen. Just because it felt like I was inhaling, spores from the ceiling. I'm not even joking. Something was on my lungs, and after those sets, I breathed pretty hard anyway. So, and the stairs are steep, so it's quite funny. I remember I would literally crawl halfway up the stairs, on the stairs, and if people were coming down the stairs, they would just step over me. I was just laying there breathing for a couple of minutes, and then I'd go back down and then do my next set.
That's funny. Yeah, it's like a dungeon, from the Middle Ages in there,
Yeah, pretty much.
What was the best gym you've ever trained at anywhere?
Strength Asylum in Stoke.
Wow, why is that such a great gym?
It's so well kitted out, but it's ran very, very well in terms of the staff keep it immaculately clean, but it still has a hardcore feel as well. It's just a great environment to train in. That's where I've been for the last year, and that's where Sass and I did a lot of our training together. Right. I've recently just moved away from that gym, which I'm pretty sad about because I do think it's one of the best in the country. But where I'm at now is pretty good. So
now explain to us why you're moving around so much.
So just because of study. So when I studied in Loughborough, that's obviously where I was. And then when I did my postgrad in nutrition, I went down to London to do that. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I went to Birmingham to study there. And then after that, I went to Manchester to do my physiology masters. And then now I'm down in the southwest of England.
What are you doing now, though? What degree are you going for now?
No. For me now, I'm not doing anything. But my partner's she's on just a constant quest to just rattle up as many master's degrees as she can, basically. So she's now looking at the exercise medicine one at Bath. This will be her 4th one.
Wow. Right. Now, what are you guys going to do with all these degrees? I mean, because you're training people in the gym and doing diets for people, which I'm sure you're making good money. But I mean, what do you need 14 master's degrees for that?
For me, being able to deliver some academic content is useful for our site. So like we run a pretty good subscription site here in the UK.
Oh, okay. Give us the address. What's the web address?
It's trainedbyjp.com.
Okay.
We're at 4,000 members now.
Wow.
Paying $6.99 a month, so paying $10 a month.
Wow.
So,
well, I'm missing the boat. How many members you got?
4,000.
That's a lot of money, Jordan.
It's okay. I'm very surprised that it's got to where it has, I admit. Like as it started to grow, I was just like, okay, we're onto something here. So we put out a blend of just good, solid academic information.
Like what?
And then,
give us an example.
So we'll look at I'll just pluck one out. We'll just look at the way in which curcumin impacts on inflammation, just as an example. And then we'll go into depth on the specific pathways that it works on and just how that impacts on protein synthesis. And it's useful for some people. For most bodybuilders, it's pretty irrelevant, but a lot of people are interested in the academic literature. So we try to pick stuff that is more relevant,
right,
and that could be useful for coaches and PTs to help with their clients.
Right.
So that's kind of the basis of the site, and it's
why do you think so many people caught on to it? Where did you make yourself become so, I guess you could say, quote, famous that people would want to sign up for it? Because that's a pretty high subscription paid site. I haven't heard many people who have that.
Sure, yeah, we're one of the biggest around now.
Yeah, I would say.
So I've been really active on forums and online for a really long time. And the UK bodybuilding scene, it's fairly small, so sure, everyone really knows everyone.
Sure.
So from a knowledge perspective and being able to share knowledge, I've always had a skill when it comes to that, just because of my academic background. So being able to put out high quality content has always come fairly naturally to me. So then that in sync with the fact that we love hard training and how some of those videos are well received, right, it's just, we're really fortunate that it's grown pretty well. And then I suppose on top of it, we have total transparency when it comes to the drug aspect in the UK as well. Okay. So obviously possession is legal in the UK, so that affords us to be able to talk openly about things we want. So there are videos on the site that will talk about, okay, this is exactly what I would favor for a very first cycle, for a second cycle, a third cycle.
Sure.
And that sort of information is hard come by now from someone that you trust.
Sure. Yeah.
And then because I share a lot of my mistakes that I've made in the past, I've been able to build that trust. Right. Just because, again, I'm totally honest with everything that I do. So it's just kind of an amalgamation of those things that's then allowed us to build the site to where it is.
So what do you think a good cycle would be for a top level, high level amateur or, entry level pro? What do you think a good quality cycle would be?
It would always be as little as they can possibly take to still make progress.
Right.
So it just depends on that path that individual's taken. If they've been patient through their career, they'll still respond to relatively low dosages. But if they start jumping up their dosages too soon, they're going to need more later on. And this is one of the things that I try to deliver on my site, is that if you start basically playing your trump cards too early, you don't have them left to play later on in your career. So guys that are wanting to use growth hormone, they're wanting to use insulin, they're wanting to use higher doses of trembolone. I say to these guys, try to exhaust everything that you can growth-wise on as little as possible. So challenge yourself to grow off just 300 milligrams of testosterone.
Right.
See what you can do. And once you've exhausted that, take 400 and then take 500. But this is over the course of maybe 18 months.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you get 5 years down the line and you still never played one of these trump cards. And all of a sudden you drop trembolone into the mix at 150 milligrams a week. And then, whoa, your body responds like crazy.
Yeah.
But we know guys that are tracking Tren into their very first cycles. and then you've just used that card too early. It's not that I'm against it in terms of a massive health detriment, because nothing that we do is healthy.
No.
We know. But you're just cutting your own progress short, simply. And that's the frustrating part, because as a beginner, there's only so much you can grow in a given period of time.
Sure.
So using those drugs early on doesn't make sense anyway.
No, I always say that. I give the analogy of blowing up an anthill. You know, if you have to blow up an anthill, you can use a firecracker, you can use an M80, you can use C4, explosive, you can use a nuclear device. They all accomplish the same thing, but which has the least collateral damage?
Sure. But trying to get people to buy into that message is difficult.
It's tough.
That's the hard part.
Tough.
And then also trying to convince people that they can reduce what they're taking and still make progress and later reintroduce those aspects further down the line. Again, that's a hard fought battle.
Right.
And I've lost many clients in that phase where they've come to me and I've been like, okay, now we're going to actually focus on the training aspect and we're going to cut your drugs in half, but they don't like it. So then I would lose those clients.
Right. Now you got a show coming up yourself, June 23rd. It's one of the UK pro qualifiers that have just been established over there in the UK, and hopefully, it'll turn out well for you. What would be a cycle that you would be on preparing for this show?
Sure.
Just talking specifically about yourself.
So right now I'm on 700 milligrams of test prop, 700 milligrams of Masteron, propionate, 700 milligrams of Tren Ace. So that's my weekly total of injectables. I'm on 0.5 milligrams of Arimidex every day. Like I roughly need that for that level of test just to control aromatization. Later on, that will go up a little bit more as opposed to bringing my test down. I'm happy to keep my test there and just control estrogen in the latter phases of prep. I've just added an oral this week, just 25 milligrams of Superdrol pre-workout. Which just helps performance a little bit more as just my calories come down. And then 8 IUs of growth hormone a day.
How much?
8.
8, okay. The old Dorian Yates prescription.
Yeah, I find that to be a pretty effective dose as well. I think any more, I've not noticed further improvements in any aspect. It's just a greater cost to your wallet.
Yeah. Dorian said he felt that 16 IUs 3 times a week worked better than 8 every day.
I heard that, and it piqued my interest for my next off season. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. What about clenbuterol and cytomel? Do you use that?
Yes. At the moment, cytomel T3 is at 25 mcgs a day. As soon as my calories start to come down, I pretty much put T3 in at the beginning. I'm not really afraid to just replicate a natural dose of thyroid. I just get that in there at the beginning. I then don't add on it though. Like I don't personally need to go higher. So I don't go to like 37 or to 50.
Okay.
Clen is my favorite fat burner.
Me too.
It's obviously not the most healthy, but this isn't a health competition. This is a bodybuilding competition. So I start at 20 and then I go to just 40, 60, 80. And Clen for me will sometimes go up to 160. But that starts at maybe 6 weeks out if I need it. So that's very much. And then I add that in and I pull it out depending on the rate at which I'm dropping. So that there could be days where I skip Clen if all of a sudden my weight starts to drop too fast and I don't want to flatten myself out too much, or then it jump up. So I push and pull Clen kind of on a daily basis as and when.
Gotcha. Okay, that's pretty much. Now, the only dosage that seems a little high to me is your Trenbolone is pretty high. It's 700 milligrams a week. I mean, that dosage, you're probably having a lot of trouble sleeping at night. I can guarantee you're irritable as hell.
Interestingly, I get 0 side effects off of Tren.
Really?
700 for me is no problem. I ran a gram of Tren, no problem. I know it's really high. I don't give any of my clients that kind of. I don't even get elevated blood pressure.
Really? You sure it's real?
Well, the Tren cough is real.
Yeah.
So is the performance aspect in the gym. I'm just for some reason, for me, a gram of testosterone will make me feel shit. It will spike my blood pressure because of the amount of water that I retain.
Right.
But on the flip side, if my test is maybe like down at 500 milligrams, I could run a gram of Trenbolone and it'd be no problem. Not that I'm advocating that. I want to make that very clear that I don't advise.
Sure, you already said, everyone's different.
Yeah. Like I think that 700 is probably an upper limit. Beyond that, again, the the cost to benefit ratio just skews somewhat, and you're going to start to suffer a little bit at the sides that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Does it affect your digestive system at all? A lot of people seem to have digestive issues with trenbolone.
I can't run trenbolone in an off-season period.
You won't be able to eat. Yeah.
I just cannot eat what I need to. Like for me, in off-season, once I start to get my body weight high, my caloric needs are so high that I just have to maximize digestion as much as possible. Tren and orals just kill an off-season for me.
Oh yeah, orals too. What's your macro breakdown? How much protein, fat, carbs do you eat when you're dieting?
Like right now, I'm on 350 protein, 600 carb, and 50 fat.
Okay, so you go low fats.
Sure. And for me, the fats won't adjust now in this phase. Like my fats won't come any lower. I think that once they're at that point, that's more than sufficient to do what we need from fats. Like as long as I then have my essential fatty acids on top of that. So okay. That's 50 dietary fats. And then there's another, say, 12 grams of fats from omega-3, primrose. Right. Just what I need to cover myself in that aspect.
Gotcha. We gotta get you. Now that my species nutrition products are in the UK through Predator, we gotta get you on some Omega-Lyze for your essential fats.
I've used it before, actually.
Oh, you did? Oh, cool.
This is interesting. I don't know if you remember this, but you prepped me for my very first ever show.
You know, it's funny because I was telling someone when they were asking me to get him on the show, I said, I think that name is really familiar. This is before I knew who you were, obviously. Really new. I said, I think I actually worked with him a long time ago. What year was that?
10 years ago.
Wow.
10 years. I know.
It
was crazy. And I remember it so clearly. I remember how clueless I was.
Isn't that crazy?
I remember sending you an email that I'd run out of T3. Uh-huh. And I hadn't had any T3 for 2 weeks, but it didn't even register the importance of T3. And you replied to me and you were like, you should probably put that back in. Well, there was just, this is the other funny thing. We ended up doing this is brilliant. We ended up doing 2 hours of cardio because I just needed it.
Right.
But at that point, I didn't know that you could split your cardio AM and PM.
Oh, no, you were doing it all in one shot? Yeah.
And I obviously didn't ask you this because I didn't ask very much. I just did whatever the fuck you said. And I was doing 2 hours of cardio in one hit on weight. How brilliant is that?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy you reminded me of that because I was having like these deja vu feelings talking to you and the name, and I couldn't place why I felt that way, and now I know.
Sure. I was like 150 pounds on stage.
Yeah, it must be. You must have just gotten started. That must have been like right in the beginning.
Yeah. But I won, so.
Yeah, you picked the right guy, I guess.
I did.
Look, I love it when I hear stories about guys that I've influenced, from when I started. Guy Cisternino was a guy that I worked with from like the very beginning, and he was not. People told him, "Don't even bother competing. You're never going to be a good bodybuilder." And I'm like, "Don't listen to these idiots. No one knows what your potential is now because you're just starting." I said, sure. And so it's great to see guys, tell everyone F off, and then they prove to everyone that they have something great within them.
Yeah. Like I used to get a lot of shit where I was training because I would finish my session and then I would like sit on the floor and I would like whip out a Tupperware box of chicken and peanut butter all mixed together. And they would be like, what the fuck are you eating? And I'm like, don't worry about me. I was just like, just leave me alone and let me enjoy this meal. Obviously, at that point, a keto diet was, it was really unheard of.
No, yeah, 10 years ago, I was kind of like a lone wolf there. Now everyone's doing it.
Absolutely. And I remember that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you reminded me of that. The good old days. You got to send me some of your pictures from back then, so I could.
I will. I will send you a picture of then and now next to each.
That's awesome. What do you think you'll weigh on stage in June?
I think once I'm fully carb back up, I'll be probably about 245. I think to get everything off and be totally depleted, I'll probably go down to 240.
Right. And
then once I fill back up.
So that's like you said, that's 100 pounds of muscle you've gained in 10 years.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. See, I tell people all the time, if you're not gaining 10, 15 pounds of muscle a year in the beginning years of your bodybuilding career, you're missing the boat. You're doing something wrong. You're not maximizing your potential because when you first start out, you should grow like a weed. And it's important that people find people like yourself, like me, there's other people out there that are good as well, who can help guide you so that you don't make the mistakes and basically throw away those young years, because your 20s and your early 30s are going to be when you make all your progress. And you know what? If you miss those years, guess what? You're not putting on that crazy muscle that you could have put on when you were younger. Absolutely. I don't believe older people can do it.
Absolutely. Like just between, so when you first prepped me, I did the show in April, and then there was the British finals that was 6 months later.
Right.
So I jumped up 7 kilos of stage weight.
Oh my God.
6 months.
Wow. Good rebound.
So it was over 15 pounds.
Yeah.
And with no change to conditioning.
That's crazy.
And then I ended up coming third at nationals because of it.
Wow.
Just from putting that weight on.
Yeah, well, sometimes I always tell people, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to compete for 3 years because I got to put more muscle on. I said, competing is the best thing to do because you get a great rebound off the show. It's like your body now wants to store things and grow. So,
absolutely.
I think it's a mistake when guys are afraid to get on stage because they don't think they're ready to turn pro yet. That's ridiculous.
I agree.
Well, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to train with you, or if they want to go to your website? Give me the contacts.
Trainbyjp.com is the website. Obviously, we are on it with our content, so we're on there daily. There's a forum section on the site as well. So for those of you that can't afford online coaching, you can go on there and you can ask me anything, and I will answer it that day for you.
Awesome.
So we've had I tallied it up the other day, and there's been over 20,000 posts in the forum section.
Nuts.
So if you went into that forum section and you had a question, it's likely someone has probably already asked it, and I've probably already answered it. So for just the $10 there and then, you're probably going to gather a lot of information. But then also on top of it, there's endless hours of video content.
That's a great idea. I think it's a great resource. I just launched my own app this past year, the Dave Palumbo Experience app. And it's the same thing, they get unlimited access to me asking questions. All my protocols are on there. And all they got to do is, download the Dave Palumbo Experience. Now, I was lucky. I had a guy contact me, and, I have a partner in this because I can't build an app. Apps are very expensive nowadays to do. And so I was lucky to do that. But I think what you're doing is great. I think it's a great resource. And, I'm kind of proud of what you've achieved over the last 10 years. You should be as well. And I want to wish you the best of luck in June at your competition. Thank you, Dave. I really do appreciate it a lot. All right, and that's going to take us to the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and we'll see you next time.